Are live here Tuesday at 2 o'clock, like always. Here with Luke and the new creative specialty. They these two just created a company called Creative Viking to start crushing um, creative deals. But we're going to just jump into some news and some updates. The market is plugging along. Now we did see some creep up in interest rates in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if anybody was
We
paying
sure did.
attention. I don't know if anybody was paying attention to the interest rates. They definitely took a spike. We're definitely seeing stuff in the sevens. I was kind of curious if that was going to pull the August market forward just a hair. We're still hovering in the 11,000, 600, 700 active listings. So
Still low.
I still think I'm still a fan of looking forward that you're going to see a slowdown in that August, September, October, like you do most falls. Kids go back to school and stuff kind of just settles down. Obviously, we're not looking for the fall we had last year because that one was
No.
that one was a little
Please,
bit.
let's not do that again.
That one was but everybody I think is probably restructured and better fit for a slow fall.
Yep.
So that's it. And I did
I'll
see
tell you-
another.
Chris, I'll tell you, we don't have 24 flips going on anymore, so that's good.
24 flips is a scary number, and someone might have told you to maybe slow that down, but I won't talk about that.
I can't remember who his name. Yeah, it might have been his initials might have been CE. I can't remember though.
But yeah, another national news things. You got to pay attention to the national news. They're like, investors are not buying anymore. Well, I can tell you that we're wholesaling deals and people are borrowing money. So when I saw that, I think it was on Redfin, but it's all the big box buyers who are not buying anymore. So watch your headlines and understand what they're talking about. But yeah, all the big box buyers are not buying because their capital has gotten too expensive. So just like, so that's why we're talking about creative deals. Why not take some sub 2 deals or some seller finance deals? We're going to talk about some of those because you know what? I mean, the creative way is the only way to get the cheap money right now. So let's dive into a little bit of that.
Heck yeah. So yeah, I'll start really quick with basically just kind of how this deal came about. So we had bought it from a wholesaler for kind of crazy. We bought a mobile home for $40,000 in Cottonwood. Needed a lot of work. So buying for 40, we came in and we decked it out. We made it really, really nice. So we put 60,000 into it. And it's very rare that you buy a property where you're putting more into it than what you bought it for. I know that's pretty common in like the Midwest and everything, but it's not very common here in Arizona. So it is a non-financeable mobile. Okay. So with the fact that it's non-financeable, it would be nice to get creative on it anyway. So it was actually this was shortly after we had created the Creative Viking. And so we're like, all right, Luciano, let's see what we can do on this thing. Because we knew it was non-financeable. So I mean, realistically, we were thinking for like a cash price, it would probably sell in that there's comps that are financeable that have sold around like that 190 to 220, 210, 215. Because ours is non-financeable, we were thinking realistically it would probably sell in that like maybe 170, 180. Right. But then insert Luciano.
Boom. So what we ended up doing is, it's a lot of the times, like if you're going to do seller finance and property, you may wrap it, meaning you buy it on seller finance and then you sell it on seller finance with higher terms, higher down payments, so on and so forth. In this case, what we're doing is we purchase it cash. We're all in, let's say about 100. Yep. And we're actually going to sell it off on seller finance.
Okay.
But now what happens to this $100,000 debt? Who pays that? Well, what we're doing, we're actually selling it, I think, at a 225. Yeah. 20 grand down, so it leaves us with 205. Right. I don't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but we're actually seller financing it on a first position note and a second position note. So one note's going to be call it about 50 grand. The other one's 155 or so, and so we take that 155 debt and we actually discount it a little bit, call it about 130 or so, and sell that to a note buyer. Because now a note buyer is on a position that they're in first position for 130 on an asset that's worth 225. Well, they'll be in first position after we take that 130 that we got from the note buyer to sell to pay off that 100K in debt.
Right.
So it's great because we made 20K on the front side. The spread when we sell the note, and then the cash flow. So we make cash now, cash flow, cash later. But I'm gonna pause right there for any comments.
So so I actually am doing a note series over there on YouTube.
Yeah.
So he's obvious. So I've done one class on discounting notes. So he took his $155,000 note and sold it for 130. You said so he sold his note at a discount, so that note buyer can actually gets it at a discount. He can. What was the term on the first note? What kind of rate is that?
So we actually have both the first and the second on a 10.5.
Okay, so he got it on 10.5, but that note buyer got a 155 note and he got it at 130, which is, right. I mean, rough numbers is what, 16%, 17%? I'm doing that off the top of my head. So he's actually going to increase his yield from 10.5 to slightly more. It's probably bouncing up around that high 11s or maybe even 12s. I'm just doing math in my head. So that's, buying and selling notes. Like I said, I did a series on it. But my Thursday class is actually basically how you can leverage notes. So you can actually take that 155 note and sell it on leverage or get leverage against it. You can say, hey, I got this 155 note. I want to get my cash back at 100, 110. And you can actually assign that note. And actually, if you can create enough of these, just for those of you can actually get banks to leverage you on these. And you can borrow it. You can get that money at 6%, 7%. So just a little, another trick in case you wanted to try that.
So what we're doing is we're taking the first, because you guys got to keep in mind we owe 100 to a hard money lender, right?
Yeah.
We've got the purchase price and we've got the rehab costs. So we owe 100 to a hard money lender. That first note that's going to be, let's say 130. That's going to pay off the hard money lender. So they'll be set there, and then we're basically creating that second note at 10.5%, and we're going to hold on to that one ourselves. So that's going to be the nice cash flow.
Correct. And then you have the last window cash. Once that person sells a property or refis that property, whatever's left on that second, it's going to come back to us.
Right.
So.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, I went brain dead, but basically leveraging your notes, like in this example, you got the 155. If you create enough of them and create enough volume, you can do, it's called hypothecation, where you actually can go to a bank and take your note and then leverage your note. It's like leveraging an asset. A note's an asset. You can leverage that. So another trick you may want to think of.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. What I was thinking of notes, I think is kind of like the shadow of real estate, right? The majority of real estate investors see the house, they see, the cash flow that's made from the rental, so on and so forth. I mean, and you have benefits with that, right? You have your appreciation, your depreciation expense, you have leverage, you have all those things. But then the note world is kind of like the shadows of that, and it has other benefits, right? Meaning you may not have appreciation, but if the market tanks and it depreciates, your note, it's still valued at the same amount, which is now when you get negative equity or low equity properties, it's kind of exactly what happens there. But the market doesn't affect your note the same way it does houses. So in a downturn in market, having notes could be a good thing. Or in an uprising market, I think having houses like we saw in the last 4-year run, 18 through 22, you wanted to have houses at that time. So, I mean, you can still have houses on a downturn in the market. It's just more of a waiting game if you're betting on any kind of appreciation. So, but notes don't move. Notes stay.
Yeah. So, with the note, you don't get the appreciation. You also don't get the deduction. But typically when you're buying notes, you should be able to get them at a discount for people, especially. But like if you want to be a note buyer, for instance, your marketing is still the same. Like if you want to get in the note world, the biggest piece of notes is finding the private money lenders, which I'm sure you guys are like, finding the private money guys that want to come up and buy these things, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest trick. But
right.
you could, I mean, the most money to be made in notes is actually buying, like
non-performing.
Yeah. So like you get these note buyers that are scared. Maybe for instance, like this guy that you just sold off your note to for 130, 2 years down the road, the borrower quits paying him. He's like, oh no, what I do? Like deer in the headlights, right? Well, once again, if you understand how the note works, like I'm not afraid to foreclose on somebody. Do it as a hard money lender all the time. Just call the attorney, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So just, buying non-performing notes, and I think there's going to be a decent amount of non-performing notes coming up in the future. So if you understand that, a lot of guys go out there and say, I want to buy tax liens to buy a property. Well, tax liens are very few opportunities in tax liens, but if you buy non-performing notes to get a property, that's definitely a way to do it.
Chris likes non-performing notes, right, Chris?
Yeah. I like.
I'm just kidding.
I like every aspect of real estate where it's just more of an advantage. I was just talking to Luciano before we jumped on, and he was like, and I think this is just like everything we've talked about. I think for the last year we've been talking, it's like he was like sticking everything through the wholesale model doesn't make sense because it's like kind of a little bit beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Right. You were just saying that, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the 9 to 5 of real estate. I mean, you can build a business, there's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, like if your wholesale business doesn't make money 1 month, let's say if you're a smaller operation but you have 10K on cash flow,
yeah,
like you're good. So, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I was saying. You can't just bet everything on that. It's a great starting model. But going on to the other strategies is definitely the way to go. Oh, and by the way, talking about wholesale, I don't know how to do it, but I'm aware that you can actually wholesale notes.
Yes, you can.
Maybe I'll learn and we can do another.
Go watch my video on YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
There we go.
But you were saying like it's just like you just did this creative deal, but like we've talked about on the Red Room the whole time. It's like wholesale's great. Creative's great. Novations is another, like you just said before we hopped on, you were saying, hey, we're working some novations too. Mm-hmm. Novations are great. And then obviously if they just want to list the house, like the average house in Phoenix is $500,000. Like, would your wife Sage be pissed off if you sent her a lead for a $500,000 listing? Lou?
There's $15,000. Yeah. No, exactly. Right? 100%. And that's what you have to do. Obviously it's funny because obviously everything creative kind of sticks to one region, right? One area of what you originally think about. But like you have to get creative, exactly like you just said, in all instances of real estate now. Like you said, It can't just be wholesaling. The creative real estate now is having all these extra strategies of having the tools in your belt to be able to, okay, this isn't going to work for this. So guess what? We're going to come in and offer this. And that's what we're going to actually do next week on the call. I've got a novation call. It's a 20-minute call. And I'm just going to play it. I'm going to play it. We'll just set it up on the mic and have it playing. But again, it was a call that they refused to do the cash. They wouldn't go that low, and literally just turning them, scorching the earth and saying, okay, well then this is another option we've got. And they ended up signing up that same day. So it'll be kind of cool.
So let's do a little fast forward, but I'm sure they probably didn't like the wholesale offer, but going back to a novation offer is like, oh, you don't like that offer, but by the way, we got one over here.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. 100%. And then that's what we're doing now is, so for anyone that's out there, so what we're doing is if we have exhausted some of our routes of how we do it, so like in Viking real estate, we didn't know creative very well, right? The creative side of it. So that's why, we did the creative Viking now is because now, okay, cash isn't going to work. Novation is not going to work. Okay, Luciano, you work your magic. Let's see what you guys can do now. And so that way we'll be able to turn deals that maybe never would have been a deal into something now. So that's what's kind of cool about it.
Yeah, knowing all your strategies is definitely going to be beneficial. And with the, I think we'll just call them waters muddy. You got so many different versions of who's like, I mean, who jumps on social media, right? Anybody saw Grant Cardone was 10 days, 12 days ago, like there's zero chance of a downturn, right? He's like, there's no inventory, right? That was
right.
And then he was at one of his ocean properties. And then, I've known Sean Terry for like 20 years, and Sean was just on like 2 days ago going, look at all the evictions coming up, right? And he's like, there's some muddy waters ahead. So like, here you got Sean Terry going muddy waters. You got Grant Cardone. It's like, oh no, it's perfect,
Yeah, I know.
But I think the waters are just going to be muddy, and so just understanding all your exit strategies is going to be huge.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then Luciano, I'm not sure if you want to. I think it'd be kind of cool to talk about the deal that was the North Carolina one.
Let's hear about that one.
Oh yeah. Let's definitely tell you, it's still in the works. So that one is it's super simple, and I love this deal just because it's very simple. It's basically it was a $1 million house. What happened is the guy bought the house. He's got money, which is great because he actually doesn't need a whole lot of money. That's another thing to talk about when you talk about creative. It's a lot of the times it's asking a lot more questions than you would in cash, at least in my opinion, to really assess what kind of offer you can put together.
What their situation is.
With their situation. Because a lot of times if you find out they don't have a big cash need, then why offer a big down payment or a down payment at all? Something says, hey, what's going to be your moving cost out here? Let's give you that up front. Finance the rest. Right?
Yeah.
So this guy doesn't need a lot of money. And so he bought the property for, I think, about $1 million, $1.5 million.
I think that sounds accurate.
Yeah.
$1.50 million or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so he just wanted to recoup his money. He was getting a bunch of cash offers. So a lot of the world of wholesale has already done me a huge favor already, because they already beat down this guy for like 700 all the way up to 800 in that range. And so I came in and I said, why don't we he wanted he wanted savvy too. He was like, I'll do $1 million if we do this amount of interest. And then I came in and basically said, hey, why don't we just do 1.1 and just do it at a 0% interest, basically. As a matter of fact, and let me rephrase this because I got to give credit to Sean, my acquisitions guy. He's the one that had this conversation. I think, as a matter of fact, it was a guy who said, if you give me more, I'll do 0%. And so the property is actually worth maybe just under 1.1.
Yeah, right.
Still, it's right in that range. And so he agreed to do 0% financing at $1.1 million for $50,000 down, which that is under 5% on a property that's, I mean, it's somewhere between clean and flipped. Really, it's a really nice house. The guy owns a bunch of restaurants. Something came up that he wasn't able to do the move, and so he had to back out, and he just wasn't able to get what he got it for. And now the only thing, there's just a few things that we're working through with his attorney and whatnot, which is why it's not locked up yet. But the verbal agreement, the structure, we've already made it all happen. And if you look at any Airbnbs in the area, I mean, this could be a cash cow. Even on just a wrap, the strategy we were talking about, why don't we just sell it retail at just about the same price that we got it for, maybe a little bit more, take a down payment, and then undercut the entire market of loans with like a 4.5, a 5.5. Now they don't have to pay PMI. They can come in with a lower than 20% down payment and still avoid PMI with an interest rate that they can't get through any bank in today's market, especially after that little hike. And so that's the exit strategy we're going for. And the cash flow on that, I think at a 5.5, what was it, Luke? It was about $3,000 of
I was going to say, it was
cash flow.
Yeah, it was going to depend on if we ended up going Airbnb or if we were going to go long term on it. But what was our payment going to be on that number? At the 0%?
Really,
wasn't like 2,800 or 2,900.
If we do 1.1 million, divided minus 50,000.
I think it was like 2,900 if I'm not
Divided
mistaken.
360. Yeah, 2,900.
Yeah. So 2,900, and I think we were saying long term. I'm sorry, yeah, long term we were looking at it would rent at like what 5,500, maybe 6,000.
Yeah.
And then short term, because we looked into Airbnbs in the area and what it could pull in. So this would have been interesting, and we're still working on it. So I'm saying it would have been, but we're still working on it. So we'll see where it ends up going. But short term, we looked at a couple Airbnbs in the area. They were pulling in 14 to 16,000 a month. So you start talking about having an Airbnb in a really nice area in North Carolina, doing this, let's split the difference, say 15 grand a month. Your payment's $3,000. I mean, obviously you're going to have expenses, you're going to have cleaners, you're going to have all that. You got to furnish it, so you're going to come in and make it unique and nice. But I mean, like it's tough to miss on that. You know what I mean? You could have months of where it goes really bad in Airbnb and you're not really getting many rentals, but all you got to cover is your nut of, say it's, after everything, maybe it's $5,000 or $6,000. That's not too bad. So,
well, if you have to, let's just say you put your 50 grand down, and let's say, what do you furnish your Airbnbs for? Maybe like 25,000.
So I mean, most of my Airbnbs are pretty small. So I actually furnish all mine for 10, and I'm actually kind of I look for deals on offer up and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, this is a big ass house. So this is, what was this house, like 4,000 square feet? So I think
close to.
I'd say we'd probably be in that ballpark of like 25, 30. So
yeah,
the plan was going to be Luciano and his girlfriend, and then we would maybe make a trip up there too. We'd all go furnish it together.
The Viking compound.
Exactly.
If you take your 50 grand down and you call it 25, you got 75 in it. Let's just say you said 3 grand, your Airbnb is, call it 15 gross, maybe it's 2 grand in expenses. So you got $10,000 a month. You get your money back in 7 months. I mean, 8 months,
right.
How many investments can you do that in?
No. No.
And it's free debt too.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. You're getting into an amazing property at nothing, like next to nothing out of pocket. Give me a break.
Yeah. Just another little clue for you guys watching. I don't know what the exact number is. It's between 40 and 45. Talk to your local CPA. But if that person, say, for instance, is taking his $3,000 a year, he can take that $3,000 a year for 30 years, 40 years. There's a number out there, and I don't know what the exact number it is, that doesn't trigger income tax on it. So call your local CPA, but it's a great selling tool to be like, oh yeah, if he sells a house, someone asked, why wouldn't he just list it? Maybe he's only in it 500 grand. And if he lists it and he sells it for $1 million, he gets his $500,000 in, he's writing a check to the government. Right. So if you sell it on terms and you don't hit that specific amount, I'm just going to use 40 as the number. I'm not a CPA, so don't, like in this particular instance, it would be perfect. He's getting that $36,000 a year. He's not triggering that thing that makes him have to pay taxes on it. And he can just sit there and collect $36,000 a year forever tax-free. So
right.
Check your local CPA. I know it's out there. I don't know the exact number.
Luciano, do you remember why he didn't want to sell it on the market?
Yeah, and I was actually just going to bring that up. So on the markets, I was going to tell you why we're still in the negotiating process. But no, in the market, he didn't want to pay the commissions. I mean, it's hefty on $1 million.
For sure.
He doesn't need the money. That was the biggest thing, right? He's like, I don't need the money. I have money. I'll just take it over time and then, have another paycheck coming in. So that was the biggest reason. It's, what I say, it's like there's two types of people who do creative financing, those in pain, which are your pre-foreclosures and stuff like that. And then you have your ones just would rather have a gain. And this guy was like, well, the gain to him was to get his number, not needing the money. That was a win for him. And then I was just going to say kind of a little nugget here, because I think it'd be helpful for anybody doing creative financing. What we were running into, what that we're kind of working through right now, was 0% finance, and you might run into imputed interest.
Yeah,
which is kind of our rents right now that we're working through. Whether do we put interest on the property or do we up the price a little bit to make up for that? Because what that is, in short, is basically the IRS imputing that interest to. So you're going to get taxed as if you were collecting interest as a lender, on that. If you're doing a 0% financing, and there's a certain rate and stuff, not to get too crazy into it, but we're just working out that kink. And if we can figure that out, then just move forward.
Should be set. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering why we're in North Carolina this summer, there's your answer.
That's right.
It'll be fun. Chris, you'll have to make the trip out.
Yeah, well, I'm
not far.
I'm always looking for new markets. We're in Florida, Utah, Texas, so
Absolutely.
I hear North Carolina and South Carolina may be my new stomping grounds.
There we go. North Carolina is what, maybe a couple hours from where you're at in Florida?
No, it's because that state's so long. Just from Fort Lauderdale just to Jacksonville is like 4 hours.
You're like,
oh, is it really?
Yeah, I think you probably
never mind. That's true. I've heard that because I've heard that it's like 2 hours from like Miami to the end of Key West or something like that.
Dude, it is 8 hours from Florida to Key West. I've done the drive before. And there's a funny thing about Florida, because I grew up in Florida, in Orlando, Florida. And anybody from Florida can probably agree with this. It feels like it takes forever to just get out of the state. But I can, anywhere in the West, because now I'm living I'm in Carson City currently, but anywhere in Arizona in the West, you can move from point A to point B, and it feels like short. In Florida, dude, it's different. It's not even the traffic. I think it's just flat, and it's the same trees the whole time. But anyway.
Two states you don't want to drive across: Texas and Florida.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Texas is not fun either. That's very
done them
true.
both.
Yeah, side to side, Texas is like 12 hours or something like that. It's crazy.
Chris, you don't tend to drive from one side to the other of Alaska?
Well, I've never. I've been to Alaska, but I've never had to drive across. Wouldn't want to.
For sure.
Anybody got any questions out there? Let's fire some up.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you got any more topics, we're gonna talk about novations next week. Like, look, we're gonna actually analyze a novation call. Luciano was telling me how he's been, like I said before we get on the call, he's been doing more novation calls. So because the wholesale gig, if you're just a wholesaler out there, you better learn some more tools. Whether you go to Just for Flips and learn them, or you go to Creative Viking and learn them, you need to learn some more tools.
The decision tree doesn't work for cash, and then it's like my instinct is pitch creative, but having novation as a tool, I'm like, or should we pitch novation? It should really be cash, novation, creative kind of flows a little bit better. Yeah. But I think it just depends on the property itself. I mean, if it's in a market, I'd pick it up. Creative, if it's in a market, I wouldn't touch it because I'm just not in that market. Novation.
Right.
So someone just asked, how do you handle insurance when sub 2? So you got to get a document that gives you the ability to talk to the insurance company. Typically, you like to take that sub 2 and drop it into a trust, and then you put the insurance in the name of the trust. Is that how you guys are doing it, Luciano? Cool. I mean, that's typical, the standard.
Yeah. So in our case, we're not doing it with the trust. I find this very much a Florida thing.
Okay.
Because I haven't done a sub 2 in Florida, but I have an attorney who before I even learned sub 2 or wholesale, talked about it, and they do the trust thing. But in our case, we keep the insurance in place and become an additional insurer, and also sign paperwork that we now get. We get paid out any proceeds from an insurance claim, and then we also have a power of attorney that allows us to act on behalf of their insurance, on behalf of their mortgage. So if there's anything that we need to, it's a limited power of attorney. So anything that we need to do within that scope, we're able to do it. But we don't put the property in a trust. I know that sometimes shields you a little bit more from due on sale.
Yeah. So typically, I mean, kind of what I've done with sub 2s is like just Mr. and Smith own the property. I put it in the Smith Trust, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, like with the name of the address in there a little bit too, or something. And then, but Chris Eymann can be the trustee of the Smith Trust and basically control the property. If I were to just switch the insurance to the Smith Trust, Mr. and Mrs. Insurance Company would be like, oh, they just moved into their trust, no big deal.
Right.
If you are worried about due on sale clauses, you can do. There's another little technique. You can actually, buy the deal from them on a land contract and then sell another deal on a land contract. So you kind of sandwich the deal in 2 land contracts, and then there would be no due on sale clause. Another little trick.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Yeah.
Matthew Khalil. Matthew Khalil. I think I know that guy. When you wrap a carry, who is on title?
When you wrap a carry. So I'm going to assume it means if I buy it on a seller finance, let's say a subject to, typically anytime I buy it, I want to take title, right? For tax benefits, so on and so forth. Now, when I'm selling it, that's where I can do one or two things. I can either go ahead and sell it on and transfer the deed, or I can sell it again on a land contract, or agreeing for sale, or contract for deed. They're all the same things, just depending on what state. Essentially, an executory contract where I'm still holding on to the deed, and that deed will transfer once the terms from me to the end buyer, so B2C, are fulfilled.
Yeah. I would because I'm a foreclosure guy, I would never transfer it on a full title. I would definitely, like he's talking about, sell it on a land contract, or all the different synonyms of that. The reason for that is because if your buyer quits, you've made this deal with your seller and you wrap their deal, right? And you kind of, at least I try to be like, I want to make sure that deal goes through. It goes through the terms. There's no like difficulty. But if you sell that deal to somebody and you actually transfer title to them, they go through a divorce or something happens in their life, you have no way to get it back. So their problems become the seller's problems that you guys talk to. And then all of a sudden this seller now has a foreclosure pending, and there is zero you can do. Now, if you take it on a land contract, it's going to depend on your state. If it's Arizona, you can take it back in 31 days with less than 25% down. If you're doing like states like California and Florida, you actually have to do a full eviction, but it gives you the option to recover the property. Transferring that deed from B2C gives you zero options. So something to think about.
Interesting. Zay asked, how do you find boots on the ground, someone to walk the buyer through when doing virtual wholesaling? So personally, what we've always done, because we've done wholesaling in Louisville, Kentucky, we've done, Salt Lake City in Utah, we've done Florida, and then obviously we do a lot of virtual wholesaling. Believe it or not, I guess it is virtual wholesaling up in northern Arizona. But so what we've always done, Zay, is we make sure that we have a contact there before we go. I mean, so before we really dive in and say this is a market that we're going to make sure we're spending money on, marketing and all of that, we like to make sure we have our pieces in place ahead of time. Because again, if you don't, you don't want to be having deals that you can't do stuff with because you didn't put you didn't get your ducks in a row, right? So again, we have agents in these markets that we hit before. We've got people that are savvy investors as well that are on our team, not on Viking real estate, but I'm saying that will do stuff for us, right? That are kind of working with us in that sense. So that's what we always make sure we have. You don't have to go that route. You could always go on Craigslist and you could say, hey, I need photos taken to this property. I'll send someone $100 to go get photos for a Dropbox and coach them through it. But again, if you're trying to do any sort of volume in any way, then I highly, highly recommend having people that know what they're doing. And again, they don't even need to know what they're doing in the sense of they're really, really good at wholesaling, but more so just you don't have to completely coach them all the way through all the different steps of the things they're going to be doing. Your guys' opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that's great. Just having to do the basics. I think real estate agents are going to be a great tool because they're already used to doing a lot of that kind of work. They already know how to kind of take a picture, in the corner of the room, wide angle, open up the windows, a lot of those little things. Hopefully, I've seen some listing. As I'm saying this, I'm taking it back slowly, right? But for the majority, for their time, throw them a couple $100 or $100 or whatever. Or even a JV agreement. I've done it where I give somebody $100 and I said, hey, I'll give you 1% of my assignment fee, which is not a lot. It depends how big the assignment fee is. But that's one way to do it. And then they can go and do this. So that's the way I would say utilizing agents is kind of probably the best go-to. And then too, if you guys end up knowing how to do novations, if not, hit up Luke, JV with him on novations. But that could be something that, or Chris, if you're doing novations, if you already have that agent in place, it could also be your listing if you end up having to convert that to an ovation for whatever reason.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Another big thing is if you're going to a different market and you're going to do some virtual wholesaling, make sure you have your some form of dispo or some type of buyers figured out. Because again, you hate to see it when you see someone who's got a deal, in a market, and they're like, I don't know what to do with it. I can't find anyone. I don't know where to send. I don't know where to send this thing. I have no resources of what to do with this, but it's a deal. And so you hate to see that. And so again, just make sure that, but when we came and started doing, business in Florida, guess what? We teamed up with Chris because we know that Chris has got a full dispo side set up there. Right. So again, I mean, I sent over a deal this morning to you guys it was a deal from House of Viking, and it was in Florida. So I sent it over, we got a number on it. And so again, that's just, you need to make sure you have those tools in place before you just jump into a new spot.
Yeah, but if you're just starting in your backyard, it's just easier.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
What is opinion on this deed in lieu foreclosure being used as a performance guarantee? Is there another way to protect seller for performance by buyer? I am reading a pre-signed deed in lieu is not enforceable.
So good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So just being a foreclosure guy and a hard money lender, and I foreclose on people. I just, I like just a foreclosure, a deed in lieu. Like, let's just say I sold to Luke, and Luke, runs up his credit cards or or gets in a car accident, whatever, and he gets a judgment against him. You can take a deed in lieu, but guess what goes with the deed in lieu? The judgment. So, then that would stay on the title. That would transfer back to your seller that you wrapped, and now all of a sudden they got a judgment that they had nothing to do with. Maybe they borrowed $100,000 from a buddy, and the buddy got the judgment. That's $100,000 that's on that title. The only way to clean that off is to foreclose or pay it. So
right.
Yeah, so you have kind of the two ways to go about it, right? You have the deed in lieu, which that's actually a concern on that, right? And then it's going to depend. I think it might depend on state to state too, when that's enforceable and when that's not enforceable. I won't go into that because I'd be kind of talking about my pay grade on what I know. But another way to do it is just exactly like you said, is going through a foreclosure. And I'll just kind of throw an example on a sub 2, right? Instead of doing, a lot of people, there's your way to do it, and there's the just take it sub 2 way of doing it, which is not necessarily right. That what you should actually do if you want to do it the right way is do an exact mirror wrap, which is a loan so there's a loan from the bank to the seller and one from the seller to you. And that exact mirror is exactly what the loan from the bank to the seller is, just in case now you don't make your payments, the seller can essentially be able to take the house back. And then that would be going to the official foreclosure that you normally do.
Yeah.
So
cool. Zay looking to wholesale virtually because my market Portland is super expensive. I've been looking to market in Virginia. Nice. I'm not the right guy to talk to about Virginia. I don't know really anything about Virginia.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Northeast either. I know all the Southwest states and stuff, but not the Northeast.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, cool guys. We usually jump on here for 30 minutes. We've been almost up to 40. We love all the questions, guys.
Absolutely.
We love the questions. It helps the conversation go. People can learn different things. If you ask a question, someone might have been thinking about it as well. Thanks for jumping on with us, Luciano.
Thank you guys for having me.
Like the different deal structures. So cool.
Love it.
We'll be back talking about the breaking down the novation call next week. So
absolutely. Good stuff.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Cool, guys. We'll see you. Luciano, appreciate it, man.
I'll be expecting that one. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys.
Absolutely.
Later.
See you.